going to introduce our panelists and we'll get the discussion going. Topic for today's webinar. Again, these webinars are hosted by the WhyTry organization. That's who I'm here representing. WhyTry has been around organizationally for about 20 years. We specialize in helping organizations teach individuals resilience. Where we have probably made the most biggest differences in the world of education and also mental health, but we get used in other organizations as well. And we have a kind of a specialized approach to teaching the skills of resilience. And so we always love whenever we find individuals or organizations that share common values around that. So today we're going to be talking a little bit more about that. We're going to talk about building student and staff resilience through transformational leadership. And we have some real experts with us today. Let me introduce them individually first, and then I'll mention one of the organizations that they're attached to that's really, really important. First, we have Dr. Melissa Chester. Dr. Chester, part of a group of individuals committed to serving and impacting the lives of those in the community, former professor who taught on the collegiate level for approximately 15 years before transitioning into entrepreneurship full-time. Taught at several universities, including Florida A&M University, Florida State University, and Grambling State, University of North Florida, and online as well at Southern New Hampshire. Co-founder and CEO of Black Educators Rock, a national nonprofit goal to further the academic success of our nation's minority students by closing the attitude gap that exists among educators and students. Dr. Chester is also an Amazon 3 times best-selling co-author, presented numerous keynotes, etc., in various capacities, also actively involved with many nonprofit organizations, on the executive board at UNCF Jacksonville Leadership Council, as well as several other areas. The list goes on. Welcome, welcome, Dr. Chester. We are so happy to have you. Next.
Thank you, and happy Winning Wednesday.
Absolutely. Winning Wednesday. I like it. Next, we have Dr. Ashtina Baez. Dr. Baez is the Chief Executive Officer of Ashtina Baez Consulting, an adjunct professor at Columbia University, Russell Sage Doctoral Program, organizational strategist, complex systems leadership, well-being consultant for the New York City Department of Ed, specializes in curating the conditions to create an intersectionality between organizational culture, sustainability, and indestructible well-being. Devoted the last 2 decades of her life to leadership and organizational well-being transformation globally. Dr. Baez has led global teams in education, corporate, and nonprofit sector in utilizing evidence-based mindful practices to cultivate psychological flexibility and emotional resilience, cultural transformation, and sustainability, as well as diversity, equity, and inclusivity. Dr. Baez, welcome, welcome. We are thrilled to have you.
Greetings, family. Great to be here.
And then last but not least, we have Dr. Dennis McKeezy, co-founder and CEO of In Our Best Interest LLC and the Off School Grounds Coalition, which all 3 of you are affiliated with, in which we've had a lot of great representation from before on previous webinars. Our friends at OSG always represent well and always bring the highest example of the power and the importance of community. Dennis has dedicated innovative and resourceful education professional for close to 30 years of experience in working for private, public, and charter schools in New York City. It's his belief that with the support of educators and their passion to learn and grow, we can enhance capacity to facilitate students' learning, mental and social emotional growth, all of which leads toward urban school reform and community development. Dennis consults nationally with teachers and administrators of schools and districts and has presented at school leadership conferences. Former principal at one of the premier charter schools in the country, built a proven track record of success and desired to share his effective and beneficial strategies with other educators in the area and across the nation. Dennis, welcome, welcome. We are thrilled to have you.
It's my absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Jason.
And as I mentioned before, you'll hear this term, it'll come up. In fact, you'll see it in the background there where Dennis is at. But they do all represent the Off School Grounds Coalition. I think Mark will probably put some links in the chat, and I'm sure it will come up. But it's a great community that we hope you'll be excited to hear a little bit more about and see represented during our discussion today about resilience and transformational leadership. I just realized I better formally introduce myself. I am Jason Johnson. It says WhyTry webinar. I should change that. Maybe I will in a minute. I'm Jason Johnson. I represent the WhyTry organization. My background is I'm a school psychologist, came from the world of public ed. I guess from a professional standpoint, my area of expertise is resilience. I was published on the topic of adolescent resilience. That was kind of how I started, I guess, making my name in the world of resilience. Came over to the WhyTry organization about 7 years ago, and I oversee training and research for the organization. And it's my great pleasure. My two favorite things that I get to do is number one, training or presenting to groups of educators and mental health professionals. And then number two, doing these webinars that we've been doing for about 2 years now. And it's just been an absolute pleasure to get to know incredible humans and to sit at a table and listen to and just be awed regularly by these great individuals that bring such wonderful and unique insights to the discussion. So that's how I want to start it today. I thought maybe we could start things off by just having you tell us a little bit, just briefly, what each of you have been kind of focused on and working on the last little while. Let's just go kind of around the horn. Let's go Dr. Chester, Dr. Baez, and then Dr. McKeezy.
Well, thank you. First off, Jason, you're only the second person I've ever heard call people humans.
Mm-hmm.
So my son's middle school teacher, that's her thing. Hello, humans. And you're only the second person. So that brings me a laugh to my face. So again, I have just been consistently working on Black Educators Rock, growing the brand, the organization. We have local chapters across the country. We're getting ready for our conference, which is in July, supporting OSG and the work that they do, just helping teachers. So my organization is primarily educators, so teachers, just helping them to be better, do better, helping them understand that it's not an achievement gap, there's an attitude gap. And so once we change the attitudes of students and educators, then the achievement gap will follow.
I love that. I'm Dr. Ashtina Baez. I am, as mentioned in that very long bio, every time I hear the bio, I'm like, maybe I need to shorten that a little bit. But my primary work is leading transformation across complex networks, districts, and now I'm excited to lead it across countries. So I'm working with New York City Department of Education, as we know, the largest educational system in our country, leading this transformational work at the superintendent level, the principal level, the teacher level, and now super excited to lead it at the student level so that we build what we call scholar advisory committees in every building so that they begin to speak to the change that they wish to see. Part of this work is being able to wonderfully showcase these students on March 17th and 18th at the OSG Transformational Leadership Conference, where they will take the stage to speak to 500 transformational educational leaders to tell them what it looks like, sounds like, and feels like to belong, to be held. But in short, family, in one sentence, what I do is I teach people how to be where their feet are so that they can hurry up and slow down and enjoy their lives, both personally and professionally.
Thank you so much, Jason. Again, I think it's quite unfair for you to have me to follow these two powerhouses, but I'll do my darndest. All right. So I'm Dennis McKeezy, Dr. Dennis McKeezy. I've been education for nearly, as you said, nearly 30 years, from school aide, teacher, assistant principal. I was also an executive director of an all-boys charter school in Brooklyn for a couple of years, and now for the past 11, I've been supporting principals and school leaders from across the country by way of leadership development and training. During that particular time, obviously, you build hundreds of relationships with leaders from across the country, and so during the pandemic, one of the acts or one of the labors of love that I had to enact was, being able to find a way to get them together and to actually share best practices and cry a little bit and to share their emotions together. And so hence I started an organization, a non-for-profit called Off School Grounds, better known as OSG. On a weekly basis, we have these meetups where we get together and we discuss these things that are important in education. But I think the real focus of this work is really about transformational leadership and how we can continue to collaborate collectively with the likes of Dr. Ashtina Baez as well as Dr. Chester in order to make the world a better place for our young people. So that's really the focus that OSG stands for at this point. And I'm looking forward to continuing this conversation throughout the rest of this day.
Nice, great introductions. I told you this is a powerhouse panel. I'm so excited to have you. So I want to pivot over now and just ask you to talk a little bit about maybe introduce what the critical issues are right now that you're seeing specifically in the work that you're doing for both students or for educators, kind of however you see those critical issues. I'll throw out a proposed order that you can respond in, and I appreciate you all being polite, but feel free to respond to one another as well. Let's go Dr. McKeezy, then we'll go Dr. Chester, then Dr. Baez.
Yeah, I think one of the major focuses as of late has to circle around mental and physical health, right? We got to understand that the pandemic most certainly has taken its toll on many of our students, their teachers, administrators, their families, the community as a whole. And so mental health is one of the bigger areas that I love to focus on, because what we're seeing is that there's been this sharp decline in the number of principals and teachers that are actually staying in the profession. I think it's very important that we start to address these issues because there was already a teacher shortage prior to the pandemic, as well as administrators, but I think now it's going to an all-time high. So it's really important that we now begin to address some of these issues. And so, we talk about self-care a lot from the lens of an adult. And I think what Dr. Baez does, and I know I've talked to Dr. Chester about, is we got to start to have that same conversation with young people around self-care, right? We always talk about, well, what does self-care look like for the adults? But I don't know if we spend enough time helping young people to do that. And so I definitely feel that mental health support as well as physical health support is extremely important during these times.
I'm going to concur with Dr. McKeezy and add that I think one thing is working in silos. Like he's saying, there's a lot of mental stresses and we're trying to do it all by ourselves. We have to understand that sometimes our support is not going to come in our school, in our building. And so I think there's a lack of understanding that support may have to be global, it may have to be national, it may have to be in another state. And so I think that one thing that we're challenged with as educators is that we don't understand how to ask for help. Don't understand how to, don't understand when to, right? And so I think that is one of the major things that I'm seeing. And then I'm seeing a very, very big divide between educators and students. Communication. There's a huge communication gap. And that is honestly because we all were brought up differently and we're seeing things from our own perspective. And we have to be more open to understanding that their lives are completely different from ours and not being so judgmental. I think a lot of educators are very critical of our young folk. And I always tell people, if you're complaining about where they are, you can only blame yourself because we were responsible for that next generation.
I definitely agree with both of you. Specifically, when we think about mental health, I want to just be able to shed some light on psychological flexibility. I think that there is a space where, as educators, students, leaders, even families that I'm working with, where there's a lack of psychological flexibility. We've unfortunately undergone so many peaks and valleys as a nation, as a world, whether it's COVID-19 or even police brutality that we are seeing on the rise. With all of these psychological traumas, we are lacking the ability to be psychologically flexible. So what happens is some of the work that we get to do is we get to teach and train the brain to be able to When we say be where your feet are, that just means we train folks to be present in their bodies. So students often, when they are experiencing trauma, they leave and, emotionally, they tap out. We're seeing the same thing is true for adults. Teachers are tapping out, and principals, unfortunately, are leaving the profession. And what we're noticing when this is happening, the World Health Organization just put out their stats for 2023. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for adolescents. So that lack of psychological flexibility is actually costing everyone with the face indirectly their lives. So we need to make sure that as a collective, when we think about a conference or we think about an organization that can create the transformation, one of the major pillars of OSG is this awareness of social emotional learning and the need to be able to train and teach everyone with a face the necessary skills for psychological survival.
And Jason, can I just jump back in here as well? Because I think in addition to everything we've talked about, we also, I think, have to take a closer look at the tech and digital literacy divide that exists, right? And I think, nowadays, young people really may sometimes feel isolated. But I think with tech, we can actually do something about that. And I think we need to start to create better spaces for young people to have access to other people, have access to professionals, have access to support groups as well, right? And so it's important that as we talk about this, we've created it by way of OSG and Black Educators Rock. We've created it through virtual means like this. But I also think now we have to start to do that with young people in a way that lets them know that there is an alternative to possibly taking their lives and things like that, that there are people that care that may not be in your city or your town, but maybe across the country, like Dr. Baez just mentioned, that we should be able to tap into. And so that tech and digital, that digital literacy divide is a big, big issue that I think also connects to the mental health support that we as OSG are trying to remedy.
Thank you. I totally agree. It's interesting. I go out, I work with educators and with kiddos across the country, and this concept of isolation continues to come up, the sense of isolation, and it's having an interesting impact. I don't have any research to back me up, but the sense I get is that younger generations may be less beholden to institutions, than previous ones have. There's this isolation that has kind of come with it, especially coming out of COVID. And I think that sense of community combined with technology is going to be a really important part of that. I did also want sorry to put you on the spot, Dr. Baez, but I'm really intrigued, and I think it's an important clarification. Do you mind giving us just a kind of brief overview on that psychological flexibility piece? Because I know it's a piece you're an expert on, and I think there's some really important implications. And I suspect we'll probably hear the term again from you as we talk, because I think it has real strong connection to a lot of the discussion that we'll have.
Absolutely. Psychological flexibility, in short, is a non-judgmental focus on the present moment. It's having the ability to be able to present yourself amidst any external stimuli and lower the internal response of your nervous system. So what this looks like in real life is when I go into a high school, like a transfer high school, where you have overage and undercredited students, I take them through psychological flexibility activities of mindful breathing, where I teach them how to actually be present in their body when they are triggered emotionally, when an old behavior pattern comes up. I teach them how to sit with it and not in the emotion. So it's this awareness that you get to teach children and adults that things are always going to happen outside of you, outside of your control. So it's not about controlling your external environment. It's about understanding how to process internally what's happening in real time, non-judgmentally.
Awesome. Thank you. It's I think it's the school psych that the school psych nerd that it speaks to, but it's really powerful stuff.
Yeah, I mean, as a school psych, really briefly, the easiest way for you to probably explain this to someone, because I always say, if you can't explain it to somebody else, then you probably don't know what it is. So the reality is, it's teaching folks how to honor everything that they are equally to everything that they are not. Period. It's honoring everything that you are in the moment equally to everything that you are not, non-judgmentally. That's psychological flexibility.
Nice. Thank you. We're just taking notes as we go. So building on that, we identified some of the critical issues. In conjunction with that, I know that you're all participating in / hosting a conference next month that's built around this concept of transformational leadership. And I think that's a really key piece in the puzzle to understand. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that idea of transformational leadership, perhaps what it is, what does it look like, how does it connect to resilience, and also what people might be able to look forward to in this conference that you have coming up. And then we'll hit some strategies after that. But around this topic of transformational leadership, maybe we can go Dr. Chester, Dr. Baez, Dr. McKeezy.
I put it in the chat. I think Mr. Schiff asked what was transformational leadership. And like I said, it's just leadership that changes people and systems, right? We know that to transform means to change. To change is constantly being. People think that once you change, that's it. Like we're human beings. That means we're consistently and consecutively, we're always metamorphosing. We're always growing, hopefully, right? And changing. And so I think that transformational leadership just shortly is just, again, changing people, individuals, and systems, understanding, identifying where we're doing poorly at so that we can change those things. At the conference, we will be talking about a plethora of topics, and I'll save that for Dr. McKeezy and Dr. Baez, but I just wanted to be brief on that, just changing people and systems. And again, change does not mean, oh, I changed, I'm good, okay, we've improved, we're done. You don't check that box. You never ever self-actualize. And so change should always be occurring, right? It should never ever stop. And so that is my definition of transformational leadership.
You want me to jump in there, Dr. Baez?
I was reading the chat, so I'd like to see how folks respond to things, right? That's the psychological flexibility piece. I agree with everything that Dr. Chester said. I think that there's this beautiful place where you can create an illustration so folks can see it in their mind, where you look at the transformation journey of a butterfly, right? A caterpillar looks nothing like a butterfly. But we do know that if you pierced open the chrysalis of that caterpillar, the essence of the butterfly is there. So when you think about transformational leadership, think about a transcending approach where you excel beyond the pre-existing limits, where you are able to take something from one way of being to a completely different way of being, whether this is an individual leader or an actual organization, where in many cases, it's unrecognizable. The school is unrecognizable. Before, the numbers, the data said that the students can't learn, before the data said that the teachers don't teach, before the data said that the principals can't lead. But when you put this school in the incubator where you have transformative leaders, where we understand that anything we change, we could change back to, but when we transcend, we actually go to this level where we excel the ordinary and we leave people and places and spaces unrecognizable at the level of excellence that we pour into it. So that's what the transformation feels like and looks like.
Yeah, and I think, again, in conjunction with what's been said already, a transformational leader encourages innovation, collaboration, as well as personal development, which in turn empowers and support the environment in which they're leading. And so it's so critical that people understand with transformational leadership, one of the bigger pieces to it that I adopt is around collaboration and just understanding that, when you see a two-day conference, transformational leadership conference, these are not just only members of the OSG family. These are people from all across this country, including, your very own, Christian Moore and other people that are coming together to really empower everybody in attendance. And so the collaboration is saying we're able to put all of those things to the side, put all egos aside, put your own organization to the side for the betterment of every person that walks through that room. And so I think it's important to understand that transformational leadership will empower folks and it will change an environment just like that. But it's done in a way that you'll have multiple perspectives from multiple organizations, all under the same pretense that this is an opportunity to transform the minds of everybody that comes in the room.
In harmony, David said something really great in the chat. He said, can you give us a couple of behaviors that are unique to transformational leaders? The number one, I think, behavior that really marks this idea of transformational leadership is self-awareness. These are leaders that are self-aware. They know who they are, where they are, and why they were selected, elected to lead, right? So it's this awareness that there's a trajectory of skills. So it's self-awareness, self-acceptance, and then self-actualization. So when you have these three characteristics in a leader, they're able to, in fact, transform any organization that they walk into.
I think another one to add to that is effective communication. Everyone communicates, but do we do it effectively? I think we have to understand that when it comes to communication, communication is not about us. It's not about me. It's about others, right? Effective communication is other-centered. I think true transformational leaders understand that. They seek first to understand, then be understood.
I love it. And I think one of the things I really appreciate about the concept is how well it connects to resilience. So like when we go out and we train on resilience, one of the big things that occurs when it comes to resilience is a shift in mindset. And a lot of it includes that awareness piece. But the two things that change that are really based in perspective is, number one, how we see our own challenges in front of us. Do we start to see them differently? And then number two, kind of how we see our connection to those that are around us. And so resilience, it's interesting, when you really dig into the research around resilience and kind of break it down into its parts, where resilience differs from some of its ingredients is resilience goes beyond like survival. It goes beyond endurance, perseverance. Those are all key ingredients. Resilience at its peak level gets to the point where you have the ability to thrive even amidst adversity, and then sometimes even because of the adversity. But it's not the absolute elimination of adversity. But to do that, to be able to thrive amidst adversity, then the beginning part is this shift in how we change it. And I love the idea of a transformational leadership model because it fully lines up as with a way to not only kind of honor that shift, that transformation, but also encourage and facilitate it as well. And I just think they're so interconnected with one another.
Yeah, Jason, I think, again, what you were referring to, I think was something that I think we talk about a lot with OSG is about fostering a growth mindset, right? And not looking at these challenges as indications of limitations, like really looking at them as an opportunity for growth. And so it's important that when leaders or teachers or even students for that matter, when they are encouraged to look at things from that growth mindset, you will see the change that you're referring to. And I think that's where resilience and transformational leadership goes hand in hand, right? It's being able to understand that it's hard to transform when we're focusing so much on the challenges, that we have to really think about it from a results-driven perspective of, if we change our mind, we can change this situation here. But if we are the same people who are just going to focus so much on the challenges, it will definitely create that struggle that I think happens in many people's lives as we speak. So it's just important for us maybe to call it what it is, which is a growth mindset. And that's really what we're talking about in these conversations around transformation as well as resilience.
For sure. And I appreciate the continued call for behaviors. Those are really big conversations. Just like a very abbreviated level, I can tell you, like within our resilience model, kind of the behaviors, the objectives we're looking at are recognizing that decisions have consequences, identifying a positive sense of identity, emotional regulation, controlling our defense mechanisms, problem-solving skills, persistence, trying again when you experience a setback or failure. All of those become kind of the behaviors. And then there's even a more micro level to each one of those when it comes to teaching them. I was wondering if we could maybe go, this is the part that I get kind of the most excited about. I know we have a lot of current educators that are on here live with us right now. And one of the things I appreciate is the people that show up to these show up hungry. They want strategies, they want ideas. I was wondering if we could just go around the horn maybe a couple times and have you share some strategies, ideas, or best practices. And this could either be at an individual or an organizational level, but some ideas that people could take right now that would either facilitate resilience or the beginning process of that transformational leadership that needs to take place. But if we can maybe go around, let's go Dr. McKeezy, Dr. Chester, yep. Dr. Baez, and maybe take a couple rounds of sharing ideas or strategies if you have some that you'd be willing to share.
Yeah, and I'll go back to the strategies I mentioned, again, to foster a growth mindset. That has to be one of the first things I think of in terms of some strategies. Another one is to encourage self-care. We talked about that earlier. So when we talk about resilience and we talk about transformational leadership, we have to understand that the well-being of the person is critical, and we have to really put a greater emphasis on it. Other things are, I think, such as encourage problem solving. Right? We can't just simply I think with education over the years, what we've always been able to do is to speak about the problem always. We continue to say, well, here's the issue that plagued many of the inner city communities or just schools in general. And unfortunately, that also leads to us just continuing to be very repetitive in identifying problems and not being problem solvers. And so another one I think is also is the importance of positive relationships. Right? When we talk about resilience, I got to know who to turn to. I got to be able to say, Dr. Baez, I'm struggling and I need some support in this area. I need to be able to turn to Dr. Chester and say the same thing and feel and not feel compelled to divulge everything that's wrong, but really start with the conversation of saying, you know what, these positive relationships put me in a position where I can now start to have these conversations and not be worried about being judged at all. And there's something that seems real simple, but I think is powerful, is just practice gratitude. Just being grateful and being thankful for what circumstance that we've been approached with. Because it's oftentimes we focus on the problem. We focus on what's wrong. I think with everything that we deal with, there is a silver lining somewhere. There is an area that we can focus on to be grateful for. And I think that's where we can help our young people, as well as our teachers, even more think about it from the lens of when we are in these classrooms, when we're in these schools, when we're in these organizations, that we are in a place that we should really be grateful for the opportunity to be able to transform lives. And so I really think that those are some of the strategies that I would employ people to think about.
I love it. Dr. Chester.
Yes, concurring with him on that growth mindset. Most of us don't realize that we adopt poverty mindsets. We do speak in lack. We speak in negativity. And so that was really, really powerful. But also understanding that your mindset, your affirmations, and your expectations should all be in alignment, right? I know a lot of people who they say they have a good mindset, but they affirm negative things, or they expect negative things, or vice versa. You affirm positivity, but truly in your mindset, it really is negative. And so you want to always make sure that your mindset, your affirmations, and your expectations are in alignment. I always tell people that's head, heart, soul, right? Your head, heart, and soul. Make sure they're all in alignment. I think that's one thing that contributes. Also, understanding that naturally, most people are me-centric. I know the word is egocentric, right? But we're me-centric. People assume that everything centers around them, but stop always looking out of the lens about you. Stop being so me-centric when you're in situations, you're in circumstances, when you're communicating, going back to that understanding that it is other-centered. When we're communicating, most times we're trying to get our points across, not listening to what the other person says, because most times when we're communicating, we're being competitive. We're trying to win the conversation, right? It's an invisible scoreboard that all of us have, unconsciously. And so I think we have to understand that many of us are egocentric and understand we operate out of that space a lot of times. Also, as Dr. McKeezy said, hey, you have to enlarge your village. You have to make the village bigger. Too often, our village is not big enough. And it's okay sometimes to understand that those closest to us physically may not necessarily be the best people to be in alignment with in our village. So be honest about the people who are in your boat. There's a saying that says, make sure everyone in your boat is rowing and not drilling holes behind your back. And so we have to be honest about the people that we collaborate with, we communicate with, understand how they contribute to who we are, what we are. And lastly, I think that it's just important to make sure that you are being honest with yourself, right? Look in the mirror. Make sure you're being honest. I always tell people when you point the finger, 3 are pointing back at you. So be honest with who you are. Take honest assessments and be honest about your faults and understand that you are to be a thermostat and not a thermometer. Often we react to things, I responded that way because of what someone else said or because of how she was acting. But you should always be a thermostat and not a thermometer. You should set the temperature, not just read it. And I think if we adopt those behaviors, we'll see some change around us. Be the change you want to see.
Love that. Family, I'm going to get so practical that it's going to make your head spin right now. So if you were not taking notes, it's the time to pull out your pen and your paper. I'm going to give you a fire-proven way to change your life beginning today. 10 years ago, I went to Thailand and a 4'11" monk told me, Ashina, if you want to change your life, you only have to do one thing. And I thought he was crazy, but since I've been doing it, my entire life has changed. The number one way to change your life, to transform anything and everything you want to see, is to make your bed. Make your bed every morning for 30 days. And when you're making your bed, family, I want you to say out loud 3 things that you're grateful for. So when you fix your sheet, say, I'm grateful for my family. When you fix your pillows, I'm grateful for my spouse, if you are. When you fix your blanket, say, I'm grateful for this thing. If you can echo 3 things that you are grateful for, you are reminded in that moment that happiness is not having what you want, is wanting what you have. So if you want to get a growth mindset, if you want to create sustainability, make your bed. Because the first act of obedience for everybody with a face on this call was making your bed. When you go to work and you come back home, if nothing went well for you that day, you accomplished one task. You made your bed. So the number one practice, family, is to make your bed. The second practice is super simple, but it's a lot of things that folks don't usually pay attention to. I want you to interrupt your thought. The negative self-talk that you are saying to yourself when no one else can hear, I want you to interrupt it and actually affirm who you are. Remember that the 2 most powerful words in the English language are I am, because the third word is who you get to show up as. So if you are powerful, if you are great, then say it and speak what you seek until you see what you said. The third way, and this is so important, overlooked most of the time, but very important, I need you to forgive yourself. For real. Forgive yourself for the past mistakes that you've made that you cannot and no longer control or undo. And forgive yourself for projecting into the future about the things that you should have or could have or would have been able to do at this time in your life. Be where your feet are, family. Where your feet are, you are exactly where you are supposed to be at this exact right moment. I want you to honor everything that you are equally to everything that you are not, and watch you transform not just your life, but the lives of the people who you love around you.
I love it. I'm inspired. I've been writing these down. That's so good. These are all great strategies. I love the awareness piece. One of the concepts that we teach within our organization is a concept called we call it surrendering the one up, and it takes into account a lot of the pieces that have been mentioned. I'm just trying to see if I can pull up a quick definition of it, but essentially what it is it's the process of really actively making sure that the students that we serve feel value and worth. And it requires elements of listening, and it requires elements of self-awareness. It involves kind of a unique level of vulnerability that I think sometimes is hard for us as the educators, because we do have to really see ourselves within it. One of the questions I'll ask sometimes when I teach it, I think it's a good way to frame it, and I don't mind throwing it out right now to our attendees, but raise your virtual hand if you've ever had the experience of having a student that would work for you when they wouldn't work for other grownups in the building. And I suspect that we'll see almost every hand go up. It's a thing that happens from time to time. My follow-up question is, if you've had that experience, what was your secret? What was your secret to getting a kiddo to work for you when they wouldn't work for other grownups in the building? And I think regularly it comes back to that concept of connection. Yeah, there you go. Nancy threw it right in the chat, right on cue. It comes back to that concept of connection, and it comes back to that concept of, how we connect to others. And when we do it effectively, we can still maintain accountability. We can still hold on to boundaries, appropriate boundaries. We can still even administer and discipline when we have to. But for me, the real key, kind of the gauge, the assessment in it has more to do with how the other person is feeling. And, I appreciate what Dr. Chester said. We are typically kind of self-centric. We always see ourselves as the center of all of our stories, because we are. But the reality is, we're out in this world serving other humans, and how they feel in our presence, how they feel in our communities impacts how they're going to respond. And so things like empathy and self-awareness and vulnerability help facilitate that connection. And when we do this effectively, then we start to connect better with our kiddos, and our kiddos start to respond different to us, because when kiddos feel different around us, they respond different to us. But that transformation always has to start with us. Again, this is why I get so geeked up about this idea of transformational leadership that you're promoting, because it lines up so nicely with that WhyTry approach. Any follow-up thoughts on that before I shift us over to another question? Okay, if not, let's talk about this. This is a thing I think our OSG friends, like this, I think is one of you all's superpowers. And so I was wondering if you could maybe talk a little bit about this, but the power of collaboration and building community. What role does collaboration have in how you approach resilience and transformation? What's the benefit of it, and how do we get better at this piece on collaboration and building community? It's one of the things I think we've admired the most from you. But let's go with Dr. Baez, Dr. Chester, Dr. McKeezy.
I think collaboration is the secret sauce, right, to it all. I can look at Dr. McKeezy and I can see myself in him. I can see the greatest version of myself in him. I look at him sometimes and I see the possibility of humanity in him. So it's being able to look at a fellow leader and be able to, when you talked about empathy a moment ago, I remember my grandmother used to define it as the ability to feel someone else's pain in their heart. But when I see brother Dr. McKeezy, the way he, in every breath, when we are, whether we're on an OSG meeting or just in passing, celebrating a success or one of the members that, received their doctorate, being a part of an organization that has the most actual, PhDs and EDDs of all organizations in the country is phenomenal, because the ego is not present. the idea of collaboration comes when we realize, like in times past, we used to, hunt, right, as a civilization, and we would get so excited when the men of the village would come back with the game, and everybody would usually say, who slaughtered the animal? OSG is a type of organization where we don't look at the animal and how many animals were slain. We admonish and we lift up the arrow makers. So Dr. McKeezy has done such a beautiful job to say it's not the person who gets the most acclaim or the spotlight. It's every individual that each and every day they spend hours and hours perfecting their craft, understanding what it looks like, sounds like, and feels like to make every child with a face feel seen and heard. They're making their arrows. So we're all collaboratively moving the needle together. So that's what collaboration looks like. The strength is in the we. There's no I in team, and we all collectively reach that goal together.
Yeah, Dr. Chester.
I'm sorry, I was responding in the chat. My apologies. You said the question was, what does collaboration look like?
Yeah, talk about collaboration or building community, what it looks like, what the benefit is, just any thoughts you have on it. I think it's one of the things you all are the best at organizationally. It's really impressive how good you are at it.
Oh, yes. So when it comes to collaboration, that's something that has been at the forefront of anything that I've ever been a part of. I think the first thing that a person has to do is, in order to effectively collaborate, you have to make sure you understand what your goals are. What are you trying to accomplish? And then you find like-minded people that are trying to do the same. I think sometimes there's ineffective collaboration because sometimes we're aligning ourselves with people who are really not on our level, right? We're misaligning ourselves, and so the collaboration is ineffective. When it comes to collaboration, one theme I had one year for one of our conferences was collectively collaborating to answer the clarion call. And what we have to understand is even the best, you think about the best athlete, the best speaker, the best whoever, all of them still get coached. All of them have a coach. The best people have coaches. And so when you're collaborating and you're finding those people who are like-minded and who are better than you, all you can do is output better. I think that it is how we change not only ourselves, but our immediate situations, as well as our larger situations. I.e., here it is, I met OSG by happenstance through another colleague in Black Educators Rock, and OSG started collaborating. They focus on the leader, we focus on the teacher. It makes sense, perfect sense for us to collaborate. With that collaboration, that is mean that we're going to be making stronger schools. So while we're building a teacher, they're building a leader. And that is no better example of collaboration. And so I think that unfortunately, most times people don't collaborate because they're afraid to give up something. They're afraid they're going to miss something. They're afraid that, the spotlight is going to be missed. And what we have to understand is that we are so much better together. We're so much stronger together. There's an analogy, you can take one stick and break it, but if you put multiple sticks together, it becomes literally unbreakable. And so the way in which we're going to effectively deal with a lot of these things that are happening in education is to make sure that we bring in people of like minds who are aligned with us in order to effectuate change.
Yeah, again, that's a key component of this OSG family is really about collaboration and just understanding that, in order to create the most meaningful learning experiences, you're going to sometimes have to go outside of your organization. You may have to hitch your wagon to WhyTry or Black Educators Rock or other organizations to say, listen, hey, we got this problem here. We're trying to figure it out, but we need some more support with this. And so I think when we're talking about really a real true collaboration, at the end of it is a real meaningful experience, living experience for everybody involved. Because one of the things I noticed that, when we have conversations around collaboration, we really just, in the middle of it becomes a problem, right? We throw the problem in the middle and then we all kind of mull over it and we come up with an answer. What I think about collaboration is me saying, okay, I have a problem here, right? But I also understand that the answer may not be in this room, and when we talked earlier about building positive relationships and strong relationships, I should be able to pick up the phone as I do, and I'll call Dr. Baez, Dr. Chester, or I'll call Mark or Christian or other people from WhyTry and say, listen, we having a little dilemma here. What is it that we can actually do to increase this tribe that we have, right? Because at this point, when we think about OSG, it's not just simply educational leaders anymore. It's teachers that are leaders. It's community members that are leaders. We're talking about elected officials that are leaders. And so collectively, I think in order for us to really make a big difference in terms of collaboration, we have to understand that exposure to diverse perspective is important. Like, it's important that I know that I'm not the only one who thinks this way. And if I am the only one that thinks this way, then I most certainly know that I haven't expanded or I haven't collaborated enough.
I love it. Thank you. I'm wondering then, let's just take a moment. So I'm going to put up contact information. We are getting close to our hour. I'm going to put up contact information here in just a minute. But before I do that, I want to give you the opportunity to promote this conference. Who wants to give the detail on your upcoming conference? Because there's some real experts that are going to be presenting there. You've got an incredible agenda. Who wants to tell the people where they can find more information about your upcoming conference?
Go ahead, Dr. Baez. You do it.
You don't got to tell me
Listen,
twice like Dennis.
Yeah, you know why I say that? Let me tell you why I think Dr. Baez would be the best person for this, because this actually, Jason, came as a result of Dr. Baez and I, who were co-teachers at Columbia University last summer. And we had amazing experience. And she said, and I've been hearing people oftentimes say how, as OSG, how can we really expand our platform to include other people who may not know about OSG? And Dr. Baez was one of the first persons who said, listen, you know what, we need to do a leadership conference here at Columbia University. And then I'll let her tell you the rest of the story, because it was a very unique situation that I most certainly was not totally aware of the direction it was going, but this is something that I know she envisioned some time ago. So I'm really glad that she has the opportunity to talk about this conference.
In harmony with that, this idea of making sure that people like David and Nancy, who's blown up the chat, people who have not blown up the chat, but actually have this passion about what it is that they do, we wanted to create a space where everyone was welcomed, and not just welcomed in terms of inclusivity, but actually had a sense of belonging. And when you go through the walls of Columbia University, although things have made slight shifts, you still will see that there has not really been to date any transformational leadership conference that really highlighted urban leaders and the struggles and the trials that we go through. But in terms of how we create a conference where you have related service providers as superheroes, because nobody checks on their strong friends, psychologists are welcomed, and all these folks with the face could be in one space so that we could not just pour into them, but actually highlight practices that are practical and applicable. So on March 17th and 18th, you're going to be, each and every one of you on this call will be invited to really take the first step to curating the conditions for you to heal and transform, not just for leaders, but I want to make sure that all of the educators on this call understand that there's a space for you as well as that conference, because you will now be in a collaboration. You will be a part of a community that seeks only to support you. We have a joke, not a joke, but an actual truism in OSG where we say no one checks on their strong friends. And we mean that. Everybody on this call, you are the strong friend. You are an educator because you have the capacity to care in a large way. And we just wanted to check on you. We wanted to love you back. We wanted to create a space where you are welcome. So please, on March 17th and 18th, join us at Columbia University for the Off School Grounds Transformational Leadership Conference 2023. We hope that you choose you and you attend.
It's a great promotion. Well done. Hey, let's wrap things up with, I wanted to just go around the horn one more time. And I'm going to ask you all just to share one thing that's given you hope right now. Right now it is, it's definitely a tough time to be an educator. I think we're seeing a lot of our colleagues reach points of fatigue and frustration and even desperation. And so I think it's helpful and important to pass along, to share a little bit of hope. And so I was wondering if we could go around one more time and just have each of you share one thing that's giving you hope right now. Let's go Dr. Chester, Dr. Baez, and then Dr. McKeezy.
You always make me go first. You realize that, Jason? I've gone first a lot today. Let them
Did
go
I?
first.
I'm sorry.
Don't worry about it, Jason. I'll jump in here. I'll let her go last here. So I think one of the things that's encouraging, Jason, is just the stronger connection between schools and communities now, right? I think the conversations around looking at community, not necessarily with just the people that live in that immediate community, but when we talk about entertainers, when we talk about athletes, when we talk about people as a whole, when we talk about the community, I think that so many more people are recognizing that there is a need to address some of the issues that are in education right now. And so I'm really encouraged because of the relationships that we all seem to have formed with people outside of education who really want to make an impact and really want to make a difference. Some, can be found in the hip hop, in hip hop, industry, as well as people in politics and things like that. But it really seems as if, people are focusing a lot more on our young people, and they're bringing us to the table to have those conversations. So I'm really encouraged by that.
I love that. Something that just really was a bright spot. I looked in the chat and I saw Fia Davis, who's a deputy superintendent, and she is a source of hope. She's also a member of OSG. She has single-handedly been able to pour in the most amazing amount of light for the students and families in some of the dimmest areas. We sometimes say the brightest lights have the darkest shadows. I just want to say that we have actual superheroes among us, including you, Jason. It's this ability to not just look at adversity, but understand that adversity could be your very superpower. I want to thank each and every one of you, WhyTry, especially Cousin Mark, another amazing family member, for being the change that you wish to see and being that rainbow, right, in other people's clouds. We really appreciate WhyTry for your support. So you guys are our hope. So keep going.
What gives me hope is the 43-year-old teacher that I met here in Duval County Public Schools, who is still on fire in year 43 like she was in year 1. The first year teacher who is being mentored by the 43-year teacher. What gives me hope is just the fact that although education has had and is getting a bad rap, that there are still people who are willing and able to be in this fight. And they're coming to conferences, they're speaking about it, they're sharing their knowledge. And so what gives me hope, again, is just the collective collaboration amongst individuals, organizations, and school leaders, etc., to keep pushing this work forward. And so that gives me hope.
Great responses. I guess I got to add my own. I'm going to go super selfish, super personal on the thing that's giving me hope. So I'm also a dad. I got 5 kiddos. My oldest is a freshman. He's playing on a community college basketball team, pursuing his dream. His younger brother, he's a junior in high school, and they start their basketball state tournament tonight as the opening round. And I'm just super excited for him. I love seeing kiddos that I care about pursue the things that they're passionate about and kind of chase those dreams. And, for a lot of us, it is seeing the young people pursue opportunity that gives us a lot of hope. So I'm so excited for all the young people out there that are doing the things that they want to do, pursuing what they want to pursue. And, I hope we can take a lot of the strategies and ideas that we learn from each other and try to help those kiddos that may be struggling a little bit, as well as our colleagues that may be struggling a little bit. So appreciate you all, appreciate our friendship with the Off School Grounds Coalition. You always inspire and motivate me. I always walk away from discussion with you all wanting to be a better person, a better educator, and you all definitely delivered today. Give our panelists a big virtual round of applause. Thank you so much. This has been recorded, so if you want to share this with any of your colleagues, we'll get a link out. Please reach out, check out the socials. Reach out if you have any specific questions, and then definitely we will get you a link for the upcoming Transformational Leadership Conference. I'm so excited for that. Our founder, Christian Moore, I believe, is that right, Dennis? He's going to be participating in that?
Yes, he is. We're looking forward to it. He's
perfect. We're so excited to be a part of it, and hope you all will check it out as well. Check out their social media page as well. This is, I'm telling you, I don't throw this praise out lightly. They have figured out a really powerful approach to community and collaboration. Check them out. Check out some of their posts, and then get brave and show up and check out one of their live virtual events. It's a really fun, really powerful